Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back again to the NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. In our last few lectures, we have actually discussed about different case studies where authors they have applied the qualitative research method to conduct their research and they publish their work in some reputed journals. Today, we will also discuss another case study where authors have applied the qualitative research approach and they conducted a beautiful study. So, without any further delay, let us start today's lecture number 48, Qualitative Research Case Study 3. So, in this particular lecture again we will try to understand another case study and the application of qualitative research method, and we will summarize our understanding and the takeaway from this particular case study. This is the paper titled Qualitative Analysis of Residents' Perception of Tourism Impacts on Historic Districts, a case study of Naluzhuzing in Beijing, China. The authors are Linin Dai, Xiu Wang, Zhongzhu, Li Wan and Bihu Wu. This particular article was published in Journal of Asian Architecture and Building Engineering, and I have given the QR code to get access to this particular full paper. You need to check whether it is having the subscription or it is open access. By that way you can get access to the full paper. Now, if I look at the title itself, it is clearly mentioning about the method the authors have applied, that is on qualitative analysis. Now, if we discussed about the background of the study, so Naluzhuzing located East Beijing's central axis, that is the context where it is situated. It is Beijing's oldest well preserved traditional residential area. If you have already gone through the history of Chinese evolution, settlement and all, it has a rich history and there are beautiful examples of Chinese architecture. So, this area in Beijing, their authors they have mentioned that it has the oldest well preserved traditional houses, or it is basically the residential area where you can get those kind of old construction, and it is among the top 25 protected areas of old Beijing. So, it has a historical importance and relevance. Houses more than 10 types of intangible cultural heritage. So, intangible means you do not have the tangible form, it may be culture, it may be some kind of art form with strong ethnic characteristics including the folk instrumental music, art and crafts that already I have mentioned. So, this location has faced challenges in the last few years including excessive commercialization, overcrowding and a disorderly mix of residential and tourist spaces causing some concern. So, in this case definitely it is not about this location. What we have seen in recent times, some of such beautiful places because of the over tourism for overcrowding, so it is losing its essence or there are certain sort of deterioration because many of such places are now already saturated, their carrying capacity is already achieved, but if you add on more to it, the more influx to that particular location will lead to some sort of problem to the inhabitants. Now, authors have identified several research gaps, like the past research leans heavily on large scale survey with programmed questionnaire, limiting residents' expression and neglecting identity differences. So, some work has been done much more on the quantitative front, but there it is actually limiting the residents' expression, that whether they are happy with these changes or not, etc. The literature lacks a nuanced exploration of internal relationship between resident characteristics, especially regarding the attitude towards tourism development. Now, tourism definitely will bring some sort of money to that location. There will be some job opportunity, but whether the inhabitants, the residents, are really happy with that, or there are certain issues in terms of research in that location. A research gap exists in understanding the intricate connection between resident identities, sense of a place attachment, and attitude towards tourism, which actually necessitate a more flexible methodology where you can gather those kind of qualitative aspect of understanding, experience, the feeling. So, for that particular reason, this research required a qualitative approach, and what authors have already done for this particular study. Coming to the objective of the study, in this case authors conducted field interview in the study area to uncover conflicts and residents' emotion related to the tourism that are now aggravating in this location. Also, the objective was to examine the residents' deeper internal demand to determine the countermeasures and offer suggestions for development planning, how integrated way things can be planned. And also, one of the objectives was to provide strategies to maintain residents' sense of place attachment, and at the same time you go for some sort of tourism development, but taking the resident into confidence. Coming to the methodology of the study, this study is based on qualitative analysis, and authors have used the Steiner interview questions, semi-open interviews with resident recognizing the individual differences in their perception and all, so that were recorded. In this particular case, it was like something the approach that authors have adopted, which ensured free expression, and the respondent can freely express the perception and the attitude towards the tourism, and that was recorded. And in this interview process, the recorded information were finally converted to text transcript. So, when I discussed in the beginning of this particular module of qualitative research approach, there I mentioned about text encoding or maybe speech to text. So, this is somewhat they have used in this study as well. The transcript were further analyzed with the word frequency analysis and text encoding. Keyword frequency analysis aids to determine the attitude differences and their causes among the residents. So, this is interesting approach. We will get to know little more in our subsequent slides. Now, coming to the survey design, as already I have mentioned that authors adopted some semi open questionnaire. So, there were certain questions which are having some kind of objective type answer, and then you have subjective answer as well. To structure the interview, the researcher incorporated closed questions which require specific answer and multiple choice format. These questions are organized into 5 dimensions: general information like age, education level, period of residence, for how many years they are staying in that location, then gender, occupation, and also the reason why here. Then another dimension was of cultural perception like street configuration, then social custom, historical evolution. So, how they relate to that. Then place attachment related few questions like whether like it is convenient to go to their work, there is some sort of cohesive neighborhood, or it is some feel happy kind of situation attached to the place. Tourism impact perception, which was one of the major objective of this study, there also the questions asked related to the congestion, impact on the tradition, and also the resultant consequences like pollution, noise, or pressure on infrastructure. Behavioral demands also in this case, the better facility, the different kind of peaceful life, then preserve culture, participation in some decision making. So, those kind of aspects were also captured. So, in these 5 dimensions authors captured the responses from the respondent. Data collection was done during November to December 2015, and 24 local residents were interviewed. So, compared to a quantitative data analysis, this 24 seems very low in number. But as already I have mentioned that it depending on the need, looking at the possible variation in the responses, this number can be reduced as well, and in this case 24 were chosen. Each interview were lasting on an average for half an hour. So, you can understand that the discussion was going on, it was time consuming as well, and also like it was helpful and it allowed residents to freely express their thought using the guiding questions. So, some of the questions when you prompt it, when you just initiate a discussion, then follow up you will get some kind of other feedback. So, that can also be used in analysis. Full interviews were recorded and converted into text transcript for word frequency and text coding analysis. So, whenever you are recording someone's interview, so maybe it is a long sentence, short sentence, very specific answer for a question, but when you convert it to a text, so you can find out that okay, in that response whether like the respondents are giving some sort of idea about their whether they are happy or they are not, about their feeling towards that this kind of change in approach and active tourism activity, etc. Sample selection was done based on 3 variables in this case. The first one is the occupation. This was considered whether the occupation of the interviewed residents was related to tourism or not. When I say that due to tourism you may get certain sort of employment opportunity, but if somebody is not getting it, so for them probably it is the extra people that they need to deal with, or maybe there is some sort of kind of load on the existing infrastructure. Years of residence play a crucial role, because the moment you live in a location for longer duration, you automatically get certain sort of attachment to that place. So, place attachment is there. So, for that year of residence were considered as one of the variable, and also the location is very important. The spatial position of each interview's residence was included. So, keeping these 3 criteria in mind, the samples were decided by the authors. Now, coming to the rationale for the method adopted for this study, the standard questionnaire does not reveal the internal relationship of characteristics of residents and their sense of place attachment to to the attitude towards the tourism development. So, for that this interview process, or just go for a semi structured interview, was found to be much more applicable in this particular case. So, compared to a standard questionnaire, in-depth interview are conducive in nature, and also in this case this can give freedom, the residents can freely express their opinion towards this. This method provides sufficient attention to differences among the identities of the residents, because maybe you will get some people they are very happy with this kind of tourism, and where some people may not be happy. Now, coming to the findings of what frequency analysis, where all such kind of words are coming up among all the responses. So, here you can see some of them are placed over here, like in different dimension. So, like most of the people there, they mentioned about the crowd. So, they feel that it is become too much crowded, it is also noisy, and then also it is becoming expensive, and then garbage as the outcome. This has been observed that okay, due to tourism things are improving. Yes, there are certain sort of local economy that can boost up, but as a consequences there will be more generation of the waste, and probably the tourist, there are certain lack in some part of tourists that they don't care about the environment, then so much of waste generation. Similarly, there are other few pointers that they actually discussed about, that is about the convenience, childhood, that all came out as different word when they express their feeling to the attachment. Like if you are grown up in a place and then you see that your location is now taking a different shape, that you don't feel like, you don't like that particular change, so that you can express. Now, the second graph is something where people with different occupation, they just mention about their some sort of feeling. So, this one is for the people who are not engaged in tourism, and then right side they are engaged in tourism. So, now obviously here you can see the clarity that whenever you find that okay, people they don't engage in this, so they see that there are certain sort of development opportunity, etc. So, there is some sort of heterogeneity. Now, people with different residence location, they have given different sort of values to it. Now, in this case the relative watt frequency, that some location is a noise. So, in this case wherever that was asked, that close to the main street or in the middle or far away from the main street. So, you can see that there is drastic change in about the noise, because whenever you are close to the source of the noise, you will be impacted in a maximum way. This is very interesting slide where they have adopted some text encoding analysis, where all the transcript that were developed from all the interview, the recording to the text. So, the text encoding involved the extracting key information from the interview, integrating recurring words which are frequently coming up in the discussion, establishing linkages between the codes, and constructing a network diagram to understand the contents on different levels that they have selected. Say for example, in this case that garbage, food residue, smoke from cooking, noise, these are different externalities from tourism, and then the relation that whether those are the things are contributing to the pollution, is a part of pollution or not. Now, in this case definitely these are some of the negative effects. Now, congestion is something which is a particular result, whether it is because of the street or it is more number of car or it is subway. Like that, whenever you have some negative effect, whether it cause of not want to live here. So, whenever you find that a location is getting polluted, the livability in that location is dropping drastically, you don't like to stay over there, unless otherwise you have some compulsion, you don't have any other option. So, this is something is required. Now, obviously in this case when you hope to live here, then it is related to the cultural perception or the place attachment, whether it is place attachment is a part of the convenience and the traditional culture, or maybe in the convenience, if you find that even if there are certain sort of negative results or effects of tourism, but along with that there are other few facilities like medical care, schooling, recreation, so that I can avail those facilities. So that is becoming some sort of plus point, or you can say the positive aspect to be there. So like that, based on this, the authors have analyzed some of those kind of findings. Now coming to the discussion part of it, again, like as I already mentioned earlier, within this stipulated time it is not possible to go through each and every findings of the study. You can go through the paper. If you have further questions, so you can ask in the forum, I will be happy to answer. Now coming to the discussion part of this study, the recognizing the residents as key stakeholder for successful tourism development is very important. If you neglect them, they will not have the belongingness towards that development. So that is very much important. Also, authors suggested to prioritize the maintaining traditional lifestyle, improving infrastructure and enhance the cultural perception, so that the ethnicity, the cultural value of that location will be retained along with the improvement in the tourism sector. They also suggested to preserve and strengthen the local characteristics like the alleyways and historical buildings for authenticity. So identity of a location, definitely when I started this discussion, authors started with that particular background that it is among the top 25 protected location in Beijing. So this is giving some identity, so that need to be preserved. Also, authors suggested to control the number of restaurant and entertainment businesses to maintain a balance between the environment. What happened that whenever some area is actually witnessing the development in the tourism sector, so many commercial setup will come up and they try to make profit. There are so much of new infrastructure that they are going to build, like different hotels, restaurant, etc. But as a consequences, that is directly going to hamper the existing infrastructure. If it is not having that type of augmentation ability, so then that will create pressure on the existing infrastructure. As a consequences, definitely the resident will be deprived of certain facility or certain water or maybe sanitation issue. Along with that, whenever there are growth of such kind of commercial establishment, the waste generated is also creating some issue with the environment. So there should be a balance. Coming to the conclusion of the study, the strong cultural connection and the local belongingness resident lead to a negative views on tourism and demand for cultural protection. So that is the overall findings. Long term residents strongly dislike the tourism. So this is something, those who are staying there for a long, they have dislike towards tourism development, because that is actually hampering their value, their historical perception, etc. Residents with weaker cultural ties are less interested in community activities. Residents with tourism related occupations express more positive attitude and a willingness to participate in tourism planning. So again, it is not only one group of people who are saying for it or against it, there is a mix. So that is very important. Negative opinions about tourism are linked to resident location and property ownership as well. Coming to the takeaway from the case study, so in this case the interviews allowed more qualitative exploration than to conduct this kind of study with certain kind of very structured questionnaire. Detailed interview method revealed integrate insight compared to the structured questionnaire, where you can interact with people, and then from recording to the text transcript and finally text encoding analysis, in this particular study added the depth of the rational analysis, and also it is offering some contextual insight for this location. So, like that you can conduct this kind of study for such historical area, historic core, or maybe it is something like heritage predominant area, and there you try to understand that how you can take the people into confidence whether they are really happy with such kind of development or not. So, as a method here they have used some sort of text mining, or maybe you can say text encoding into this, which are like really giving some sort of decision, okay, or that findings can be well understood through this kind of systematic text encoding process, right. With that we summarize. So, here again we learned this particular application of this interview, the speech to text text analysis, and then also how this qualitative approach can help to understand the people's expectation, people's feelings about certain kind of phenomena, certain improvement in this case which is related to the tourism in a historic setup. So, this is further reading, and now with that I conclude this lecture here. We will be discussing our next lecture, lecture number 49, on another case study of qualitative research. So, till then, bye bye and thank you for joining.